Hello everyone, I'm sure you've seen my video, or maybe I've seen my video, over a year ago of the rise and downfall of Hasbro Beyblade Burst. That video I basically highlighted all the issues that have been culminating into like one massive video. I'm very proud of that video, and I do want to say thank you so much for the support. This is the sequel video that will be addressing any arguments against that video and also anything going forward. I would also like to thank Kyo/Mo from the WBO for assisting me in the scripting for all of this. I really have to give a big thank you to them. I want to make sure this video is done right. That being said as well, no name throwing, whatever, I'm not doing that. What we're going to be doing is if there's an argument presented, I will address that argument, but I will not say, oh, so-and-so this, so-and-so that. Like, not in like, I'm not throwing it out there like that. That being said as well, we got a lot to talk about. Why speak out now, but not when it was like that for Turbo and Hypersphere? I think this is a fair thing to ask for that video. It's just the idea that these issues have been building up worse and worse per year. It's been from Turbo to Hypersphere, it's been worse and worse. And granted, I was really blind to it. Despite the fact that I had reviewed Takara Beys and reviewed Hasbro Beys, I didn't really understand the importance of what Hasbro is doing that is wrong, and the importance of TT, like, gimmicks, all that stuff, like how the Beys are handled. I didn't have a proper perspective, because it was like in a super dumbed down, like, ignorant, casual sense. Not saying that casuals are bad, I'm saying that I just didn't really look into it or really thought about it. When I really started learning about competitive, how the Beys work, why the systems are so important, I began to realize more and more that, like, damn, these Beys suck. And it got worse and worse, because by the time we got to Surge, it was terrible. And we lost any real proper alternative. The alternatives that we have now to have proper products is a joke. And then after I just said, nah, forget it, I'm just gonna do the video. And as well, you know, I mean, this goes without saying, but I feel this is a fear of anyone who works with a brand and doesn't want to call them out. It's the idea of getting blacklisted or getting kicked out. Yeah, so that's the only difference, really. Yeah, the difference between, and that's what goes to the next part, which was, this video was just made because Hasbro cut you off. So I want to be absolutely clear that when they cut us off, right, first of all, that video was planned regardless. The only thing that was different was the PR section. Even if we go by this argument that, oh, you did it just because they cut you, like, everything I've said in that video is still right. Everything I said. The criticisms towards the PR is still valid. That was just added afterwards. The criticisms to the Beys is valid. The Pro Series, everything in that video is right. So to assume any other narrative, like, against my characters is like insane. Quad Drive and Bey Team. Now, before we actually get into talking about the Bey Team, I need to explain how this QD launch actually worked. So first of all, the Bey Team was influencers that, you know, signed to Hasbro, do the promotion for the Beys and all that stuff, and this was leading all the way to QD. Now, for Quad Drive, the gimmick was 4-in-1. You would still, like, have the low and high mode, but no metal armors, and okay, well, actually, now I have to explain the whole Dynamite Battle system. So a Dynamite Battle, there is the core, the blade, the armor, the disc, and then after, the driver. So the armors were metal, okay, and then after, for low and high mode, it was a low center of gravity and a high center of gravity, alright? So in low mode, you can only use DB discs, and high mode, you can use any disc. Okay? Now for Quad Drive, they took away this whole thing, alright? Because the armors are plastic, so low and high mode does not really matter as much for the low center of gravity and high center of gravity. The disc compatibility is still the same, but nothing really there. Obviously, all the other blades are stripped away of their gimmicks. The performance tips also don't really have gimmicks. They have a little thing where you can basically just put on an attachment to it, but none of them are actually special at all. They're all pretty much plastic and non-gimmicky at all. So November 2021 was the info when they dropped the whole thing with the press release. And November again was when they did the videos for Quad Drive. And then after January-ish was when the launch happened for all that stuff. So now with that being said, we got something to talk about. So I find it very interesting whenever I'll be called out for quote-unquote leaks of Hasbro, right? Oh, that's a very interesting take. So what about someone on the Bey Team that basically broke the agreement on when the content should be live? I mean, hey, they admitted to it. and was leaking cutie stuff way before the official launch video. Oh, but that doesn't count, right? Do you want me to talk about how the influencer should not show any negativity towards Hasbro products or Beyblades? Now, I want to make sure we got this clear. This information is not coming from me. This was tweeted out by James Hasbro, whatever, that they got from some contact in El Paso or whatever. So, a third party, Bay team, whole point's an advertisement, whole point is the cutie review, the key messaging. My bad. Oh, was I not supposed to show that? Whoops. So now I have to be absolutely clear. The whole purpose of the Bay team is just to advertise the products, not criticize and sell to the viewer. That's it, right? The difference between, let's say, when Hasbro would just send a package randomly to Baytubers and this, if anybody denies the fact that the videos were meant to not say anything negative, and that's perfectly fine, but I think it's good to be in the public eye, this information. Now, wouldn't you agree? Now, either way, is this really some sort of bombshell? Not really. And what's really the point? Is the point to call out influencers? No. My point is simple. You just cannot deny that you're not being a sellout when, yes, those videos are the purpose of you selling out. Talk about the product. Can't say anything negative at all about it. So yes, by the definition, what you have signed, you are selling out to advertise these Hasbro products. This is something so simple and basic that I called out in the Vanish Fafnir news video. This was something I predicted. The part about this is going to be this, is that I already know what's going to happen. Hasbro's going to send to Baytubers the stuff, and what's going to happen is that obviously they're not going to criticize this stuff. Why? Because if they're getting sponsored, they don't want to criticize it, actually. Otherwise, they'll stop getting sent the products from Hasbro. This is not something new, but it just goes to show that when I am talking about honesty, integrity, right, transparency, that's all I want to see. That's all I want. But what is the real point with all of this? Is it just saying, oh, Baytubers, no. Listen, if they want to get their bread, if they want to sell it to the Hasbro to do whatever for the content, whatever. Go do whatever you want to do, get your bread, do your content, whatever. I don't really care. If you try to deny that or try to act otherwise, that's one thing. The real point here is pointing out how much of a puppet Hasbro is to manipulate the Baytuber influencers. They don't want any honesty with their products. They don't want any proper communication. I mean, hey, if they pretty much put in the guidelines for the influencers that you're not supposed to say anything negative, is it any surprise to why I got kicked out? Because I was actually being transparent about the products, giving criticism towards them? So it is an absolute goddamn joke when Hasbro does this PR BS where they're like, hey, we want to connect with the Bay community, whatever. No, you don't. They do not care about me, any Baytuber influencer. They just want to manipulate them like a puppet, make them sell the products, like minimize the criticism, damage control, anything possible so that they can get saved. And hey, if you want to see Hasbro failing with their many issues of product issues for quality control, cut on all this stuff, look at Hasbro's stocks and how they have plummeted over a year. So it is not just like this is an issue just for Beyblade, but general Hasbro. Their fault for being greedy, and guess what? Who gets to suffer? The influencers just want to, like, hey, live a lifestyle, pay the bread, just feed whoever at home. Okay, that's their situation. The fans get absolutely zero because we are stuck with the garbage product that Hasbro's put out. So it is a lose-lose situation and only a win for Hasbro. This is why I have stressed so hard on these videos to criticizing Hasbro and pushing that forward, because it is ridiculous that us as Beyblade fans have to suffer for years and years and years with garbage quality that gets worse in what they do less and less each year. Hasbro's audience for Beyblades. I feel this has been like the strangest argument that they have tried to use, where they say that Takara Tomy products are like for the older adults, whatever, and that Hasbro is like made for kids. I don't know if this is just not looking at the box or reading, but If you look at the age label that has been there for Switch Strike, that has been there for Pro Series, that has been there for QD, it is all the same age range of 8 and up or whatever. In Japan, it's even younger with 6 and up. They're all targeted towards the same demographic. I do not know who made up this thing that TT was for older and Hasbro was for younger. It is an absolutely stupid argument because the moment that you read the box, it's immediately debunked. I think the reason why people do this is because since the Beys have gotten worse and worse, they try to make these excuses for them. But even if, like, I even saw this one where it's like, oh, they take away the gimmicks because, oh, it's too dangerous or whatever for the kid. But the Pro Series is still for the same age range for the kids. They have all the gimmicks and everything. Oh, but is that dangerous? An absolutely moronic argument. Hasbro fans don't understand Hasbro. I wish stores in the US were like that. Apparently Beyblade isn't big enough here compared to other countries. Plus Hasbro can't get the resources to do this because of constant increase of inflation. I'm gonna take this comment for an example. For white people who know absolutely nothing about business, inflation's issues for Beyblade products. Inflation, for an example, is like when you look at the TT stuff and the price goes slightly up each year. That's inflation, right? Another important thing to keep in context here, it's not just specifically inflation, but also the cost of materials. So for Takara Tomy, when their prices go a little bit up more and more each year, that makes sense because of how complicated the Beys get in the systems. To contrast to Hasbro, when the prices are the way they are, or the quality of the Beys are the way they are, because they cut the cost. So if the price is really, really high, that's not inflation, that is Hasbro. And obviously inflation affects to a certain extent certain things. But like I just said, for Takara Tomy in specific, right? That's how it would be affected. But their argument for saying Hasbro's affected because this, that, and this tells me they don't know anything about business because Hasbro's worth billions upon billions. For God's sake, they made a post where they deleted it, where they're trying to raise the profits and everyone called them out for cutting costs. So that is what I'm trying to make out right now. Nothing to do with the pandemic or anything else. If they are made in the same factory as Takara Tomy. They are made in the same Vietnam factory as Takara Tomy Beys. They are. They are. If you want to even look at how TT has approached the pandemic and also for how they've handled the Beys, if you notice from GT to Sparking to DB to BU, it is less, 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 less. Why? Because instead of doing quantity, that's what Hasbro's trying to do. They're focusing on quality. And TT still has production issues, but those are mitigated by how much they're actually putting out. Hasbro, their issues have more to do with their cheapness and greed than anything else. Now take for an example here when I talk about Hasbro fans do not really understand Hasbro. On the left you have a response from I would say a Hasbro Defender that is like an amalgamation of like this weird Hasbro Defense thing, whatever. And on the right side is my in-depth response to it. Now, the TLDR, if you don't want to actually read it, is that they have no idea what they're talking about because they are making up this thing where, oh, you shouldn't compare it to the original Japanese product because for some reason comparing it to the standard that's presented, the original release, you should not do. So even when you do it with Hasbro only, that's when everything gets shut down and their argument falls flat. Because in the reality, when I say they don't understand the Beys, they don't know actually if the Beys are good or not. They will just talk out of nothing just to formulate an opinion, just to actually defend. I have went through the effort on my testing channel with Quad Drive, for an example, to go through each of these Beys and to see the value. I actually know what is competitive, determining what is value, so I do the testings, right? So when I say they do not actually know, they do not actually have perspective or insights to the Beys' actual performance. So when they start talking, oh, actually this was pretty good, or this was, I'm not too sure, they have no point of reference to what they are talking about. So every time they open their mouth and they try to defend Hasbro, they are clueless. But this is the big issue at hand, because when they are defending the Beys, they cannot defend them if they do not actually know anything about them or actually understand them. So to perfectly illustrate what is the Hasbro Defender's defense commonly, they will go to any length possible. Oh, actually, even though it doesn't have everything that it should have had, it's actually not that bad. Are there cases where very, very specific parts are better because they aren't like the original? Yes, and that is mostly on performance tip variations, okay? But what they're doing is they're generalizing it to the whole when that is not the truth. Now, to me, this is what we like to call the cope. Now, the cope is essentially when, because they purchased this garbage, they just want to watch reviews that validates their opinion because they already made that purchase. So anything that's positive, they will think, oh man, wow, I like that. And anything negative, they will deny it because they purchased it, they don't want to feel, oh, I really did make a bad purchase. When in reality, they are shying away from the honest opinion on these products. Microtransactions. To relive the saga about this, the app developers had basically added microtransactions to the Beyblade Burst app. Now, the point here is that the Hasbro app has always been free, a buggy mess, and a low-effort game. It was never designed with paid content in mind, and mind you, the game is not, no matter what anybody says, is not worth anything at all. Now, for the prices that they charge for the game currency, I think any price at all that they could put on it is not justified at all. Now, before someone says, what about Rivals? Rivals is a game that is designed with money in mind, similar to gacha stuff. If Rivals is designing their game where you are forced to pay to actually enjoy that game, where they're designing the game where the consumers have to pay money instead of the game being balanced to where it can be free to play or you could put money, that's one thing, okay? That's one thing to put on Rivals. But the games are so far different. You could even argue with how Rivals has their quality for animations and models and work and stuff like that, you could maybe justify it. For me, I don't think at all that Beyblade should have things charged like that. I'm not really in support of it. Rivals is like this kind of gray area where it's like, okay, I guess, but the app is undeserving at all. And I feel it is a bit predatory. Now, what I mean by this is because it's not like the app has gotten better or it's deserved. For God's sake, it's not even a good quality for a mobile game. So when they're doing this, I do think it's a bit much. So you can't convince me, like, what is it, like $14 to get like 3,000 Bay coins, whatever, it makes sense. So when I made this comment about this is not something that they should be doing, and only morons, right? Only morons are peddling this garbage. I'm not saying that people who enjoy the app are morons. What I'm referring to is the specific group of people, right, who will defend Hasbro no matter what, or who will virtue signal or not understand the argument at hand, but will virtue signal. And what I mean by this is that they will put out something to make themselves look good and just to target another thing rather than focusing on the issue at hand. So let's really try to delve into this and to understand. First of all, games Halo, Fortnite, Call of Duty, whatever, just because these games have issues, right, does not mean that now everything is now justified, especially with the Burst app. Like, two wrongs do not make a right. And the general sentiment towards microtransactions has never been a positive thing. It has very much been a negative thing with how games have been kind of getting greedy and trying to incorporate it into a game. This is not a new thing in gaming culture. This has been an issue that has been ongoing for years and years and years, where developers feel the need to try to squeeze out as much money as possible. And, of course, there are cases where microtransactions, you could maybe say, make sense. Like I've said, for an example, okay, fine, gotchas, whatever. Gotchas is its own thing, so if you specifically gotchas, fine, right? But for very other things, I gotta make this clear, but for the Burst app, for what they're charging too, it's not even like it makes sense to pay money at all for it. You are essentially paying for stadiums, which look almost the exact same as the ones we've seen from the past. You're paying for Bay skins that are pretty much the same as the Elementals from the past, but now you actually have to pay money. The launchers what, they have like one tiny effect on the thing that you don't see for the rest of the thing. So the purchase of money does not make any sense for what they are charging, and it is not justified to be in the game. So when I'm talking about common sense and moron, it is the people who are choosing to defend this and make up any excuses possible and try to look good in the public eye. Because if you virtue signal to the people who like Hasbro, well, you're gonna get praise, because it's a lot easier to get a mob of people who like Hasbro to go up against people who do not like Hasbro and have valid reasonings towards it. More problems for Pro Series. Pro Series was released in, wow, it was released really 2020? And basically the issues with these products that I have done multiple videos on is that because Hasbro is basically paying for cheaper materials, they have quality control issues, the teeth will wear, part breakage, all that stuff. Now, I need to explain something because I think there's a lot of confusion whenever I talk about Pro Series. Pro Series is not just teeth wear, it's that the products are just generally more faulty and more prone to breakage. I will be giving an example here. I will have some Reddit posts that I will be showing pictures of people that are claiming of Pro Series breakage. So this is clearly an issue that is on Hasbro. The reason for this is because when Hasbro is paying for cheaper materials, they are obviously trying to maximize their profit. So Hasbro's business model has been, for the longest time, to try to maximize profit and minimize the amount that they're spending. You can actually look at a video that we did where we actually do highlight this, and we talk about how you can see how much dividends they actually are giving, which dividends is how much it's for the investors, right?
So they're losing money on E1, TV film, whatever, on Hasbro Gaming. But partner brands and franchise brands, that's where Beyblade gets inserted 10% up. Yeah, we know why. But if you look in the bottom here, 97.4 million dividends paid. Yeah, that's the investor's cut. So when all the products got cuts on quality, on detail, the price went up. Here's where the money goes, 97.4 million.
I think even for a completely super casual point of view, like clueless parents or even kids don't really care for comp. And Hasbro's not worth it anymore. Like, it really isn't. Like, at the point of what Pro Series is charging in other countries, you might as well just buy TT. Even in general, I would just say buy TT. Why wait for a Pro Series when you could just buy Takara Tomy? That's literally what I do not understand. If there's a very specific release where it is not cheap to get the TT version, then maybe I could see it. But Pro Series is not worth it. These are issues that have been repeated through waves and waves. There's the same issue with part choice and all that stuff. So let's be honest with Pro Series. Pro Series can be a very good thing if done right. If done right, hey, this is really good for collectors who want to get bays that obviously are very hard to get now. Great to get the parts and everything. It's very enjoyable. Okay, when they do it right, it's awesome. But when they screw up on poor part choice or general product quality, then after Pro Series becomes more of a negative, because now it's not just, oh, I have to... Now when I'm paying for it, I'm paying for basically like the between like a fake and a real, like a mid-fake of the thing for just quality because of how like cheap it is that they produced it, that it kind of feels like that. The double standard with Hasbro. Why is it, for an example, Belial 2 from Divine Belial had an issue where it's a very specific mold? That basically, in very specific molds, the stopper would be very hard to close in, but the issue got very overblown. Like, the real reason it got attention was really just more of the fake outrage and the clickbait towards the stuff. It's very strange to me when pointed out it's not that big of a deal, there's the claim, it doesn't matter how much testing you do. What are you talking about? That's a real post. So no matter how much evidence there is, it does not matter. So when I'm trying to figure out the issue, and I boiled it down to what the specific mold issue was, other people don't care about that or correcting any information afterwards. There was no talk afterwards, no pinned comment, no nothing. This is especially important for an issue that's been made such a big deal. Okay, If there's a specific mold, there is a specific mold. Okay, sick. So then how come months and months afterwards, there's no corrected information for viewers or people who buy the product to actually look out for? There was no updated description. There was no updated pinned comment. Nothing that was publicly there to update on the previous video. So when I say clickbait or misleading or lying, when you have limited data on reporting on something, you are either rushing a video that is poorly researched, then after it gets the wrong idea and people can't identify the issue, for the reason to try to reel in as much views as possible onto a topic. And I should also mention, no surprise here, they actually conceded on the fact that it gets easier. So I guess it's not a big problem if there's multiple solutions towards this, right? Because there are that's not a big problem then, right? But either way, if we go back onto my video, which I did, I even made a actually not pinned comment, but you see it on the top anyways. I made the comment where I address everything in specific with screenshots, why I thought I didn't agree with it, what are the molds to look out for. I updated with all of this information. It is not wrong to be skeptical at the start about this when there is limited data presented. In post, okay, I said fine, okay, if there is, then it's this specific mold. So don't you find it a bit funny when Pro Series has all of these breakage issues, these mold issues, all of these things? You would think that's an even bigger problem. We should be addressing everything then. But it gets strangely ignored and not talked about properly. That is what I am looking for with the double standard. Okay, fine. TT screws up, call them out for it. Why is it that when Hasbro has arguably worse because it's in a bigger scale of a problem, nothing gets said about it? Nothing at all. And guess what? Unlike Belial 2 that's very specific, almost every single Pro Series suffers from this thing. So it's a widespread issue on quality control. And here's an example of me criticizing Takara Tomy for either stupidity in design, like with the metal drivers and when they did the updated cap, or things like, for an example, the core design on Gatling Dragon. And there are many other examples of this. So when I say I call out these issues, it's not just calling out Hasbro. Takara Tomy does mistakes, you call it Takara Tomy, right? These issues are important, and I absolutely agree that anybody should have their platform to call out these issues. However, you need to make sure that you are doing a good enough job when reporting on this stuff, because a lot of people look up to big influencers and want to see what the answer to this stuff is. So there's a responsibility when you are putting out information for specific issues like this. If you want to do like a troll thing, whatever, on like April Fool's thing, that's one thing, but like on actual issues, this matters. What exactly is credibility? I have kind of seen this claim thrown against me that when I spoke out and I said they are either lying or at the very least, if they're not lying, which would be like the worst thing that you could say, purposefully lying or whatever, or being very ignorant on the issue, not doing your proper research, right? So it's either the ones who talked about it were very ignorant about it, did not do the proper research, but still put it out there, okay? That's the least. Or the worst is that they lied about it just to get views and whatever, right? On the first one, which is the more harmless one, okay, fine. Got it wrong on a thing. If you don't correct the information and words afterwards, that's still pretty slimy. The second one, if it was just done for views and just to get attention, whether or not you're using just someone's popular name in a title, whatever, just to get more clicks on the thing, if you are not correcting that information, if you are not going through the effort to set the record straight for issues like that, then what is the credibility? Like if someone does not do proper research on something, if someone is not backing them up, if you've seen someone, they do not prove themselves to be credible because they're not providing any evidence to support themselves, what credibility do they have? Now, let me give an example of why size does not necessarily mean you are credible, right? Take for an example the whole Pro Series thing. The conclusion that they arrived to, despite the wear being worse than the Karatomi, is not to let it deter you, but they also admit that there are flaws and inaccuracies with the testing, so then that means the conclusion that they arrived to is not a proper conclusion because the testing was flawed. When you are going through tests to try to prove something, right, if the conclusion you arrive to, so if you have flawed testing, then why should I believe anything you said in the video and the thing? Or if they corrected the record afterwards, or more data to prove, but there was none of that. And that's the big issue that I have here, is that when these topics are covered, if the full effort is not done, for the information said, for the testings done, then I cannot say that they are a credible person for the topic. That does not mean I hate the creator who did it or any of the creators that do it. My point is simply saying this, and I would not want to be misquoted here. I love and respect all the creators that cover and do Beyblade. The only thing that I ask is just, with these things for credible topics, whatever, it has to be something that people are knowledgeable on. Take for an example, sometimes when it's a manga translation or some translation part for a video or for combo creation or talking in depth about combinations, I credit Kyo and I credit Think for the information that they give me, right? Because they are credible people and I want to make sure that when I'm covering this topic, I'm giving the proper information given out. Why I've been the fairest to Hasbro. I want to make sure this is absolutely clear, but my videos have never just been go consume, go buy, right? When I got more of a balanced perspective overall talking about the stuff, I think it's pretty fair. The good and the bad. That's especially why I've had this testing channel to really give Hasbro a chance. No other Baytuber will go through that length to prove what they're saying with Hasbro Beys or to show how good they actually are. So I think if I'm going through the extra mile to prove whether or not the product is good or not, to really test it out and really see the results, I'm being the most fair because I'm giving them a chance to see with proof if they are good or not. Why Cutie fails. So I've briefly talked about the system for Quad Drive, but I really want to talk about the stadiums. The stadiums have nothing to them. They're supposed to be like going up in levels, like slightly elevated. They're not very unique for the season, and usually when Hasbro's done these changes to the system, it's been with the justification that it was to work with the stadium. The system didn't need to be modified to be how it was. The discs. The discs face the same issue as Sparking does and as Hypersphere did. They're small and hollowed out. Now usually a DB disc is about like 29, 30 plus. They're kind of capped at like 24, 25, 26. And this has been something I mentioned with the whole dividend thing for the investors, right? So these bays are obviously getting big cuts to them. And obviously I've mentioned no gimmicks on the cores, no gimmicks on the layers. The discs got nothing. Even the blades, like nothing unique at all. Not even the plastic ones. Like even Surge kind of had gimmicks there. Nothing here. So it's less than before. Not even that, but just no gears. I don't count if they barely do it. The whole point in Belial or Bellfire, you get the releases, there's a cool bonus of gears that could upgrade them. It's in the season in the animation, they can't cut it. They didn't do it. The drivers suck too. There are barely any good drivers for the stuff. These are all basically kind of like season 1-ish, low tier stuff. There's maybe some that are good for stamina, but in general, they're not good. Let's go over the Murder of All The Beys. For Dynamite, all of them, they remove all the DB system, whatever, the basic idea of the DB system, the removal of gears, blah, 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 right? Dynamite, Venture doesn't have the rubber. Cyclone, the wings are fused in, and Never does not have any free spin or palm. Vanish has no rubber. Kick has no spring gimmick, but technically this kick is better than the actual kick, so we let that one slide. Roar had the bottom half where you can make the circle pretty much removed, and the rubber that was on the Balkish core, Bahamut core, was removed. Moment doesn't have the free spin that it had. Savior had the remove all of the core with the bound gimmick, with all the spring built in. The rubber on Savior was gone. Couldn't technically awaken it. The shot jumping gimmick that was a fused disc driver was pretty much gone. Astral, they removed the flip gimmick and proper dual spin. The Surprising Core is not even dual spin anymore. The Blade is technically dual spin, but doesn't have the proper flip, and there's no other version of Right Astral. There's no 4 modes of Quattro, and even then, even though it's technically just 2, there's no gimmicks, and the gimmicks was 2 rubber, 2 metal, and you could switch around with it. Guilty has no metal on the core, on the Blade, and in general, the contact points for all of them are heavily modified, by the way, to make them a lot more rounder. There's no free spin on Destroy. Dangerous, no rubber. Doesn't even work with the gears. There's no burst stopper gimmick. All Might, there's no Palmer free spin. Perseus, there's no metal. Phoenix, there's no armor gimmick for light and heavy where it was a projectile that comes out. The Universe, there's no free spin. It's fixed, and there's a semi-flat ball too. Raphael had no halo. The Extend Plus is sharp but not properly done. Ultimate lacks any of the original parts and doesn't have any rubber. Yeah, that's a lot, right? They say it's the same thing that they keep on hearing, but then what are Hasbro reviews that just sugarcoat it or just try to make you sell a product? Oh wow, it's so much fun. Oh wow, you could say it's almost verbatim the same thing for saying positive as it would be for saying negative. You gotta accept criticism. You can't live in a bubble of a product. Now that doesn't mean you can't enjoy whatever you want, that's one thing. But if you're trying to, like, I've been labeled a hater for giving criticism. That is how, like, stupid it has gotten. To where they're so afraid to use my name, they'll try to give me some weird nickname. Salut, mon nom est zankye. Honestly though, on a serious note, I find it hilarious and also very funny how cowardly it is that they're so afraid to say my name like it's Voldemort or something. What is wrong with them? Dub manipulation. So what I mean here is that if you've watched the English dub of Quad Drive, Surge, Turbo, voice actors' performance, amazing. What am I talking about here is when they'll basically remove, modify scenes, or change dialogue when they do not mention a specific gimmick. So for an example, if they mention rubber, they won't mention rubber if it's not actually on the thing. Now this is a tactic that I believe in specific you'd have to say 80k for this one. Now the reason for this is obviously smart on their part, because if someone is watching the dub and they don't mention the thing, they won't actually think about the gimmicks. Hasbro fakes reviews, allegedly. So I talked about this before, but what Hasbro basically do, I'm pretty sure they just send samples to random people, and basically these are like paid fake reviews where allegedly, right? Or when the products aren't even out yet, so people see and they think, oh wow, this is a legit review, I'll go buy it. It's a slimy tactic no matter what, because when they're doing that, they're trying to make it to where, people don't really think, oh, the reviews, it didn't seem too bad. General hike in price and retail. This is something I've noticed with, for an example, Marvel Legends and general Beyblade stuff, but the prices of the base have gone up dramatically. Now, in the US, it's kind of just gone up by a little bit, but Canada and Toys R Us, it is ridiculous. Australia, it is ridiculous. While you can say, yes, it is the retail, that does factor to the retail, what they decide. Hasbro does play a part on the thing, right? There's the recommended retail price, but Hasbro does play a part. Base have gotten, like, generally unaffordable. Here's an example tweet of Toys R Us raising the prices. And what Toys R Us Canada does is it's really disgusting. And I understand, like different retails, different prices. Like Walmart is going to be cheaper than Toys R Us for sure. But Toys R Us, what they do is they'll keep on raising the prices more and more and more and more and more and more and more. And it is such a gross tactic. Is what they'll do is they'll raise it to an absurd amount. They'll do a discount where the price was what it previously was before. And they just keep raising it. And it's such a disgusting thing that they do. The Beys, I want to be honest, if you're in Canada, it absolutely sucks to afford the Beys. This has more to do with greed from, either if it's Toys R Us or the retailers deciding these prices. And it sucks because people want to buy the Beys, can't buy the Beys because something that's made to be like $20 now, in like a month $25.99, in a month $30. Like, for God's sake, these Beys are not worth the price that they're charging. And in other places like Australia and other places in the world, they also suffer from the same issue. So this is an issue in general with Hasbro, that the price that they have for these Beys do not reflect in the quality, and it keeps going up. This is not like it's inflation or whatever. This is the choice by them. We've already gone over so many times how it's their choice, right, to try to maximize the profit. This should be a surprise to absolutely no one. I feel at the end of this was like a loose situation for us fans, because influencers and creators have the ability to change this and to call out Hasbro. If every single main influencer that covered Beyblade Burst, or not even, if even like two big ones, right, started to speak out more and more like I am doing and push for the company to change, we would see change and difference. So there is a partial responsibility on creators and influencers for the message that they put out. Now listen, if they don't care at all, okay. But if they ever want to try to pretend to advocate for issues like, oh, I wish they did better for this, that, and this, why not have the base product good without having to go through this cycle of buy and consume? buying consumers, like when the product is bad, they'll say anything bad, but then they'll say, but go buy it. What if you want to make a difference? Now, I thought of this as a pretty good idea, the hashtag Hasbro Do Better. They have accounts. Let them know your thoughts. Be respectful, please. I do not condone any insults or anything like that. You want to be honest with your thoughts, that's fine. Let's keep it with no insults and just talk about the bad quality products they've been doing. I think we can do a push for a movement. Or if not, they can just know what the fans are saying. So I don't know. It's been a terrible situation for the thing, but I've done what I've done. I've spoken out on this issue. It's been a very important issue that has affected me a lot because I care about these bays so much, because at the end of the day, my goal with this, with what I cover and with what I say, is for the products to be good. I don't know if I'm going to do a sequel to QS or anything else. A little bit interesting though, speaking of Quad Strike, I think Hasbro's going to eventually try to do some showcase. Now, whether or not it's with Blade or Chem, whether or not it's with the Bay Masters, the Bay team, I'm so curious, what are they going to do? I mean, Hasbro, we know the truth about these videos and what you're trying to hide, so... Yeah, I mean, either way, I mean, if you're just curious about seeing the showcase, I guess it wouldn't matter. Hey, but hey, fair warning, if videos come up like Quad Strike, whatever, you already know what to expect. Not the truth. Gonna keep covering what I keep on doing, and, I don't know, have a good day, share your thoughts, hate me, don't hate me, don't hate me. I don't care. Have a good day, though. Have a good day. I can say that much. Have a good day, and bye.